Do svidaniya, gentlemani. I'm Red Fox, and welcome to my Kengan technique tier list. By no means is this a comprehensive, exhaustive list of Kengan techniques, missing notable entries like both hands, but I took all the techniques listed on the Kengan wiki page and ranked them on a tier list. If you guys want to see all the rest of the Kengan techniques get ranked, or a technique tier list for another series like Garden, Kenichi, or something else, 70 likes on this video. In the meantime, prepare your anuses, because next video on the main channel is the legendary NSL Kage requested Shaori Explained video. Let's fucking go! Now, before we start, you'll probably have noticed by now if you watched the first tier list videos for Grappler Baki that this video has post-commentary when the last one had live commentary. Well, I recorded an hour and 45 minutes of live commentary until realizing that OBS wasn't connected to my mic, which adds up since I started that commentary with, "Hey guys, I'm Red Fox, I just woke up 2 minutes ago and welcome to the Kengan Technique tier list." So with a little more control of pacing, as this is in post, let's just jump to the first placement. I originally placed them in alphabetical order, so first up is 2G. 2G got placed in B tier because while it's a powerful attack that amps your kicking power with torque, we've seen it used twice, and both times it was to little effect. Sure, Julius is incredibly tanky, and nothing short of fucking killing him is gonna stop Meguro, and the kick did ping him around like a fucking pinball, but the attack has a decidedly bad track record of actually doing anything. Next, cross arm lock goes in B. Originally I wasn't ordering them in tiers, but that'll change soon. The way I see it, it's one of the strongest and most effective joint locks in real life, so it goes in B tier. B tier moving forward is basically reserved for the higher end realistic moves or the lower end fantasy moves, with C being average real life moves, D being ass, A being higher end fantasy moves, and S being the best. Speaking of S, our first S tier pick, Dragon Shot. You have to be incredibly skilled to block or deflect it, and it allows the user to use Fajin, or internal energy, to launch an incredibly powerful punch from no distance, allowing for every touch to have knockout potential. The amount of people that can actually block or counter it are Kuroki tier or higher, so like the top 1% of martial artists in the world, and even still it hits like blast core and can be barrel stuffed or literally launched from point blank range to prevent its missing. Fajin Armor Piercing Permeating Force goes in A tier. It's a super powerful durability bypassing attack that's amped by Fajin, so it bypasses your defense and then hits you with a boosted attack, which blows most everything else on this list so far out of the water, as to be expected from another Fajin technique. Full shoulder throw goes into B. I have a massive Mokichi bias, remember that when it's his turn in the Kengan Maximum tournament, but this move is a damn killer. It's a more realistic move, and if done how Mokichi did it, spiking a person onto their head and neck without them being able to break the fall? Well, fuck being a fight ender, that's a losing your life ender. At this point I ordered them, with cross arm lock being the gatekeeper of B tier since, without the technical knowledge to escape it or the strength to overpower it, somebody caught in an armbar is as good as defeated. For the Gathering Cloud triple strike technique, after some deliberation, I decided to slap it into the bottom of A tier since it's a triple strike, like all 3 strikes within 1/10 of a second, to 3 vital points in the face. It's the only strike in Hatsumi's Aikido that's as much a fight finisher as his throws, and that's a testament to its power. Hammer of Burma goes into A right above it. It's one of the hardest hitting attacks in the entire series, and even has some decent versatility as we've recently seen against Natnam and Cosmo, but it still doesn't surpass durability negation plus Fajin amped attacks. The Chin Na stance, like many other stances, ends up in C tier. Stances by nature are just transition positions, but this stance, by virtue of being the stance of an almost entirely offense-based martial art of attacking pressure points, is almost completely defenseless. You can see that the front leg is vulnerable to leg kicks, the rear leg is vulnerable to takedowns and sweeps, which would knock Hanafusa off balance and crumple the whole stance, and while his hands are high, which is typically a good thing, they're positioned to attack and not really defend. Similar to Hanayama's man stance for those of you familiar with Baki. Hatsumi's 100 Meetings throw is a step above his Gathering Cloud's triple strike, seeing as it's a better, stronger finisher than triple strike, and it's basically the full shoulder throw on blue meth. The headbutt bomb is D tier, literally just a headbutt, which is weird because I'm convinced that Jerry Tyson is a connector. Must be part of his act. Lawn, or a flurry of Fajin strikes, goes B tier above full shoulder throw since a single Fajin strike alone would be above anything in C tier, and this is a barrage of them. If full shoulder throw doesn't work, it's your neck on the line. Literally. But with Lawn, you can just keep doing it. Or, like, change and do something else. There's no commitment since it's striking. Last Ditch Kick Up goes in C tier. It's niche in that it's only useful if you're on the ground. It's incredibly useful as, if you are on the ground, it's quite literally your last ditch attack to be able to safely perform a technical stand-up, so it breaks even on its special qualities, and in terms of it as an attack, it's just a normal kick, so C tier. Xilong, though, goes straight into S tier. It's a chain combination attack, so if you get hit with the first part of the attack, it becomes infinitely more likely that you'll get hit with the next, and so on. And the first attack is a fucking AoE hand fart explosion, followed by Dorian Kaio's hypnosis from Baki into a Fajin-juiced strike on a helpless, defenseless target. Yeah, okay, enough said. High Stick Shot goes low C tier, it's just a normal overhead right. It doesn't really do anything special and relies on Adam's strength to be as powerful as it is. Somersault Kick gets top of C tier since even though it's just a normal attack, the somersault gives it more damage, better range, and the end position of the kick would have the user land back on their feet. It's like a more realistic 2G or a slightly altered Rolling Thunder. Blink blinks right into A tier. The concept in real life is already really good. Attack when somebody breaks focus or blinks since they're blind for half a second. They have to do it eventually. You can make somebody blink by triggering a flinch response or blowing in their eyes or something like that, and it leaves them vulnerable. But blinking Kengan is just that much better since it's basically teleportation. Granted, the person can figure out your attack timing, predict your attacks and defend while blinking, or even bait an attack from you by blinking, but it's still very powerful even when the mechanics are figured out since it's still basically teleportation, so you can use it for offense or defense, and the opponent is blinded by blinking regardless of predictive ability, and like I said, everyone's gotta blink eventually, unless you're the connector Shen Wulong. The Crescent Scythe is a good attack, it's like a Dragon Tail-like sweeping, hooking back kick, but aside from the full body level change and the potential to sweep the opponent, it's just a normal attack. Higher end of C tier since it's not as situational as Last Ditch Kick Up, but Somersault Kick still has it beat via better range and power. The Falling Bucket Throw is a strong one, strong enough to defeat He's Himuro Ryo, who's on par with the Legends. It's another throw right onto the head, and it's a more secure throw than most since it's one hand on the back of the head and the palm thrust to the chin, both of which control the head for optimal control, but in turn there's a little more setup involved, so it ends up lower than Full Shoulder Throw, which basically does the same thing but with less setup. Lever Throw actually ends up higher than Falling Bucket since, while it's not particularly damaging, it's a quick and smooth way to get your opponent to the ground, netting you a dominant position against them. With Falling Bucket, the setup is more complicated and has a bigger margin of error if used as a counter, whereas Lever Throw locks the arm, is easier to pull off, and is smoother for counters while grounding your enemy and remaining standing, though the Full Shoulder Throw still does all of that and probably kills the opponent. Overturning Heaven and Earth is probably the Kujin style's best technique. The double hand wrist lock is probably the worst thing about the technique since a double-handed wrist lock grip, while very secure, leaves the opponent with one hand free to clobber you with or to gouge your eyes out with, but the wrist lock is painful, the throw uses the attacker's momentum against them, making it easier to throw them, and the attacker is thrown overhead, disturbing their sense of equilibrium and where up and down are, ending with a decently powerful throw. Still not better than Mokichi's Full Shoulder Throw, but without the double hand wrist lock it may have been better than the Full Shoulder Throw. For the yin-yang intersection stance, it also goes into C tier, but as it resembles a Baji Quan stance, it's easy to see that it has a healthy balance of offense and defense unlike the Chin Na stance. The legs are kept tucked in, knees are slightly bent, the rear hand defends the torso, and the elbow of the lead hand defends the head. Add to that it's apparently designed for maximum efficiency in using the Kujin style, and you've got a middle-of-the-road C tier. For Hua She, being that it's a flurry of feints until the user actually attacks, I decided the top of C tier would be best, as multiple feints into an attack is literally just one of the best tactics you can use in a real fight. Wu Xian goes to near top of B tier. I don't think it's useful enough to top the arm lock, especially since, according to Nitoku, it's actually easy to figure out and avoid even after only seeing it once, but it's a feint against foresight users. So Wu Xian could afford you a single hit against an opponent that you may not normally be able to even touch, though how you use that single hit is what makes or breaks that chance. Lion Bite, after thinking about how broken it is, goes into S tier. The one thing I'm unsure of is if whether or not Ryan, being the strongest Kure in the clan, is a good example of the average use of this technique. Does the normal technique include the blitzing? Could a normal, average fighter using the technique break 3 people's necks at once? Are those things part of the technique, or is the technique just the breaking of the neck? I decided that if the speed at which it's done is a product of Ryan specifically, it's A tier below Blink, but if Ryan's version is how the technique works for everyone, it's S tier for certain. For leg scissors, it's another realistic technique that doesn't do anything special other than sweep your opponent onto the ground. I'd say it's stronger than, say, the Crescent Scythe, since it's more secure on the opponent's legs and uses leverage, but I don't like how you also have to be on the ground to use it. More on that later. For Terminal Stab, while I won't say it's S tier since it's contingent on your being behind your opponent, it is a one-shot kill that severs the brainstem. Like, what the fuck? Blink is still probably better because after blinking, you could not only do any number of just as lethal techniques, but you could escape from just as many as well. Still, Terminal Stab goes hard. Patriot and Scud go bottom of B tier. They're both very fast charging attacks, with Scud being slower and weaker but with defensive options, and Patriot being stronger and faster, but all offense. But the fact that they're either linear enough to predict and counter, or, if Jerry changes trajectory, the momentum and speed and damage take a hit, has these two Tyson techniques bottoming the barrel of B. Advance goes in S. In the original video, I went on this 5-minute tirade about how integral Advance is to Oma and the series as a whole, but let me do you a favor and spark notes it. Advance is basically the Demon Back or Super Saiyan of Kengan. The hype transformation that allows the user to overcome the odds, but the damage it does to the user and the early weakness that Oma couldn't use Nico techniques that he had to train to overcome stops me from placing it higher, even though it's strong enough to bump Oma from not even on Kano's radar to beating Ryan. Python Hold Rear Naked Choke is the strongest realistic move on the list. It's a combination of one of the best holds in real life, the Python Hold, which immobilizes the opponent and stops them from being able to break free of the Rear Naked Choke, which then knocks them out in a couple of seconds. The only way to avoid being beaten by this move is to either brute force your way out or just not get caught in it in the first place. It goes above the arm lock because, while somebody could, in theory, fight through a broken arm, you can't really fight if you've been strangled unconscious. At the top of B, this technique beats out even most of the fantastical techniques on the list. Raging Vigor is your new champion of A tier. Limited range aside, we're talking about lightning flash level speed, power that almost turns Seki, the tankiest fighter in Kengan, into chunks, and it's easy to try and easy to land. Also, as a side note, I suspect Kyozan is currently the next in a long line of Kengan Ashura fighters being brought back to be fed to the main cast members as jobbers to hype them up, but if Kyozan defeats Oma with a Raging Vigor next chapter, that would be the biggest subversion of expectations since the Annihilation tournament, and I am there for it. Dreamwalking goes into A tier. Its after images are good, and they give Rei a free chance to blindside his enemy or avoid an attack, but the footwork can be stopped before the after images appear, and Rei could potentially be detected and attacked even with all the after images out. Sunfire is good since it's basically a barrage of strikes targeting the enemy's vital points and pressure points, but the failing is in that the attacks themselves are weaker than normal strikes, since they don't need to be particularly strong due to the targets, kinda like a bunch of pressure point jabs. Being that it's a flurry of attacks that bypass durability but are weak, I think it's fitting that Sunfire ends up right behind Lan, a flurry of Fajin enhanced strikes. Thunderclap ends up on the opposite end in front of Lan, as it may be slower than Sunfire, but it's my understanding that each strike in Thunderclap is as strong as a normal strike, if not stronger, and also target vital points. Sure, a fast barrage of light attacks at weak points has its use, but if I'm targeting weak points, I would personally value power over speed. Finishing Raishin style, Lightning Flash goes between Raging Vigor and Blink. Lightning Flash is better than Blink since, while Blink has better maneuverability, Lightning Flash is faster, is not contingent on the opponent blinking, and is a blitz and an attack in one technique. It goes below Raging Vigor because while it has better range and is probably faster than Raging Vigor is considerably stronger. Julius takes a Lightning Flash, I say he's fine. He takes a Raging Vigor, he's either gonna wish for a Blast Core instead or a damn nuclear winter when his ass gets blasted into Fallout New Vegas. Razor Edge is broken. It's so powerful, it's an actual minor plot point of how powerful it is. I'm sorry, Rihito stans. I like him too, but my boy is not strong. Without Razor's Edge, he's fucking mid. With Razor's Edge though, Rihito's so strong, he's one of the few people to have actually meaningfully damaged Kuroki. Kuroki recognizes him as having potential, And he survives a fight with Ryan, and it's even implied that Rihito pushed him to use removal. It's a god-given gift of a technique, and, unlike with Terminal Stab, where striking the back of the neck is the only lethal striking point, every single touch with Razor's Edge could be life-threatening. Ripper got lower and lower down the list the more and more I thought about it, and though it ended up at the bottom of C tier, I want to clarify. It's not because I think it's a bad technique, it's just that it's too niche. Ripper is designed to agitate the opponent by making them bleed, and panic, and hurt them. But it doesn't cause extreme pain, it doesn't do major bodily damage, and most fighters in Kengan are mentally strong enough to stay composed after taking a Ripper. Rotating knee bar goes between Python hold rear naked choke and cross arm lock. It's another limb lock like the arm lock, but rotating the knee and cranking it will cause the leg to break. And not only is it significantly harder to fight with a broken leg than it is a broken arm, but you might never walk again, which is the whole reason why knee bars and similar techniques are banned in most combat sports. The crouching medium kick goes in B tier above the lever throw. The three techniques I compared it to for this decision were crescent scythe, leg scissors, and of course, lever throw. The reason why crouching medium kick is better than the crescent scythe is because it also level changes the body to avoid being struck while your focus is sweeping the leg, and it also kicks the leg out from under the opponent, but it doesn't make you get nearly belly to ground to do it, with that position being more difficult to stand up from, unlike the crouching medium kick where you can just pistol squat stand up or rechamber and stand up. It's also much harder to push your hips through a back hook kick, and that position doesn't help. With Ryu, he's just gotta kick out while pushing off with his support hand. Easy. Crouching medium kick is better than leg scissors because it accomplishes the leg sweep without your having to get onto the ground yourself. Now you can get your opponent to the ground without having to put yourself in that disadvantageous position as well. Finally, I like it more than the lever throw because with a throw, you have to fully commit. You have to grapple to get to the throw and then push through to the throw from start to finish. With a strike like this, you can kick and then, hit or miss, just resolve your stance and continue. Or you could feign, or any number of other things because you don't need to commit and you can keep your options open. For Metsu Hadoken, it's a fucking death energy fireball you can launch from 40 feet away that will probably instantly vaporize your enemy, and you can zone them out if they have no way of closing the distance without getting obliterated. S tier. Also, I'd like to go on record right now and mention that I forgot to reorder Dragon Shot, and if I could, I'd probably put it at the bottom of S tier, with Qilong being on the top. Shield was contentious for me because it's a strong guarding technique, but how does it compare to this mainly attack tier list? It was like comparing apples to oranges, but instead comparing guarding techniques to attacking techniques. Ultimately, I fell on B tier because it seemed like a fairly mid-guarding technique that's good, but only if A, you can use your arm to block, and B, if the opponent attacks a place that you can block with the shield, also only being able to guard one or two places at once. Single Blow goes into E tier because I'm pretty sure it's just a completely normal punch. Stance of Suppression goes into B tier behind Full Shoulder Throw. It's a good stance based on Formless, which would be A or S tier if it were here, and it's low and forward, so good for striking and grappling, but it seems to prioritize offense maybe a little too much, and it shows. For Desert Palm, I thought about it for a while and went back and forth, considering that the range of movement is smaller, but the user can glide back and forth easily since it's made with moving across sand in mind, and the left hand only feigning and the right hand only attacking might make it a bit predictable until I realized that, since it's just lead hand feints until a rear hand strike, it's not that different from a real-life boxer's 1-2 punch. Feign with jabs until you land that right hand. So that goes into C tier behind Hua She, since Hua She has more feigns, more varied feigns, and can attack from any limb. And following Desert Palm to C tier is Reaper's Sickle, which is a very powerful high roundhouse kick that takes advantage of the snap of the knee in the kick, but other than being a slightly more impressive roundhouse kick, is just a normal attack. Stinger becomes the new top of C tier, since it was, as I surprisingly found out, just a worse version of the Scud and Patriot attacks. All three techniques attack by focusing their power into a piercing point. And while Stinger has a finer, more piercing point, Scud has more versatility and trajectory, Patriot is stronger and faster, both use more of the body weight, and neither move is optimized as only being a finisher, being as Jerry can use Scud or Patriot all day whenever he wants, whereas Kuroko should only use the Stinger as a finisher. Also, if Scud misses, Jerry can redirect. If Patriot misses, Jerry can stop and go again from a safe distance. But if Stinger misses, Kuroko is fucked. Penultimately, we have the triangle choke that goes straight right behind rotating knee bar since it's not as devastating, but like for the armbar, a broken arm can be ignored, being strangled to death cannot. Besides, it was always going to end up behind Python hold rear naked choke by virtue of doing a little bit of restraining and a little bit of choking, where Python hold can be used to completely restrain, and rear naked choke can be used to completely choke. Finally, we have Whale Burial, which, because of its piercing spear-like property, I decided to boost above normal attacks like High Stick Shot and Reaper's Sickle, but kept below the likes of Crescent Kick, Leg Scissor, Huache, etc. Alright, well, it fucking sucked that I couldn't get this finished and done yesterday, and that I fucking talked to myself for nearly 2 hours with nothing to show for it, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I want to get more used to live commentary, so I personally enjoy doing live videos like this, and it makes me want to consider streaming on my gaming channel, but that's a tale for another time. Y'all know the deal, 70 likes on this video and you get another one, get ready for showery next video. Be sure to do all the YouTube shit. I've been Red Fox, the man who can do anything, and this has been my Kengan Technique tier list. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.